Evan Carter stood quietly in the shining hall of the Thalari Palace. His boots made no sound on the smooth crystal floor. Around him, tall alien nobles in colorful robes whispered and stared. He was the only human in the room. The palace on the moon Valexis was the heart of the Thalari Empire. It was beautiful. Tall glass towers, glowing lights in the air, and gardens that sparkled under twin suns. But Evan felt out of place, too small, too soft, too human. He adjusted the collar of his earth-made suit and took a deep breath. I can. Do this, he whispered to himself. Today was an important day. Earth had been invited to a peace ceremony with the Thalari, a powerful alien race. Evan was chosen as the first human diplomat to attend. It was a great honor, but also a great risk. The Thalari were strong, proud, and very traditional. They did not easily trust outsiders. At the end of the hall sat Queen Zyrentha, ruler of the Thalari Empire. She was tall and graceful, with silver skin that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes glowed softly, and her crown floated just above her head. She watched Evan with a hard, cold stare. Evan bowed deeply. Your Majesty, thank you for welcoming me. The Queen did not smile. We shall see if the welcome is deserved. Her voice was calm but firm. The nobles around her nodded quietly. They did not seem pleased. Just then, a soft laugh echoed through the hall. Everyone turned. Walking down. The steps beside the Queen was Princess Celia, the Queen's only daughter. She was younger than the others, with a curious sparkle in her eyes. Her hair flowed like starlight, and her robe moved as if it were part of the wind. Mother, she said, smiling, you didn't say the human would be so polite. The Queen's face did not change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Celia walked up to Evan and gave a small bow. I am Princess Celia. Welcome to Valexis. Evan bowed again. It's an honor, Princess. I've read many things about your empire. It's more beautiful than I imagined. Celia tilted her head. You read about us? Why? Evan shrugged. Because I was curious. I wanted to understand before I came here. My people have much to learn. This answer seemed to surprise her. She smiled again. Most who come here try to impress us. You try to understand us. That is different. Queen Zyrentha raised one hand. Celia, enough. The human is here for the ceremony, not small talk. Yes, Mother, Celia said. But she looked back. At Evan, still smiling. Later, during the grand ceremony, Evan watched as the Thalari performed dances, sang songs, and shared their history through glowing holograms. Everything was new and amazing to him. He listened carefully, asked respectful questions, and thanked each performer with sincere words. When it was Evan's turn to speak, he stepped forward with calm nerves. My name is Evan Carter. I come from Earth, a small world with big hopes. We do not have great ships or old empires like you, but we have dreams. We hope to make friends. We hope to learn, and we hope to grow. There was silence, then soft whispers. Queen Zyrentha's expression did not change, but she seemed thoughtful. After the ceremony, while others ate and laughed, Celia walked up to Evan again. Your words were simple, but true, she said. Thank you, Evan replied. Your people have done amazing things. I just want to understand them. Celia looked at him with interest. Would you like to stay a little longer? We could teach you more about our world. Evan smiled. I'd like that very much. Queen Zyrentha saw them talking. Her eyes glowed brighter, and her fingers curled slightly. One of her advisors leaned close. Shall we stop this, Your Majesty? The Queen shook her head slowly. Not yet. Let us see how far this human dares to go. Evan Carter had now spent 5 days in the palace of the Thalari. Each day he walked through halls of shining crystal, talked with scholars, and learned the customs of this proud alien people. But what surprised him most was Princess Celia. She met with him every morning in the palace gardens, where the flowers glowed softly and floating lights moved through the trees like tiny stars. They would sit near a gentle stream, talking for hours. Celia was curious about Earth, its oceans, its music, its food, and even its small. You said, Part 2, 1,000 words, kaleko or interesting hunachea or third-person style malekniha or simple basic Englishka. Don't use any violated word. So please avoid any violated content. ChatGPT said, here is part 2 of your HFY Sci-Fi story. Title, The Alien Queen Glared at the Human until the princess said, he's my mate now. Written in third person, simple basic English, and with no violent or inappropriate content. Part 2, The Princess's Declaration. Evan Carter had now stayed in the Thalari Palace for 1 full week. Every morning he walked through the bright gardens, where the flowers glowed softly and the trees whispered with music. But he wasn't walking alone. Princess Celia was always by his side. They spent hours talking, walking, and sharing stories. Evan told her about Earth, its cities, mountains, music, and rain. Celia listened carefully, asking questions, often laughing when he described something strange or silly from his home world. She taught him about the Thalari, too, their long history, their beliefs, and how they spoke with both words and thoughts. With time, Evan started to understand her people better. But more than that, he started to understand her. And Celia, she was beginning to enjoy every moment spent with the quiet human. One afternoon, while they sat beside a gentle silver pool, Celia asked, why are you really here, Evan? Is it only for peace talks? Evan thought for a moment. Peace is important, but I think I came to learn, and maybe to prove something. Prove what? She asked softly. That humans can be kind, that we can be friends, and maybe more than just friends. Celia looked at him closely. Her eyes sparkled like stars. You speak carefully, but you feel deeply. Evan gave a small smile. Maybe. Later that evening, the royal court gathered for a feast. The long tables were filled with glowing fruits, warm drinks, and food that hummed with gentle energy. The nobles wore long robes and gold-threaded cloaks. Music filled the air. Queen Zirentha sat at the highest table, watching everything. She saw Evan walk in beside her daughter. Again. The whispers started. The human is always with her. They speak as if they are equals. Surely the queen will stop this. But Queen Zirentha said nothing. She simply watched. At the center of the room, a noble named Lord Varn stood and raised his cup. A toast, he said loudly, to the future of our empire. May it remain strong, pure, and proud. Many Thalari nobles raised their glasses and cheered. But some glanced at Evan with cold eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, Princess Celia stood up. She walked slowly to the center of the hall. Her voice was calm but strong. I too wish to speak of the future, she said. The room fell quiet. Queen Zirentha narrowed her eyes. Celia continued. For many days, I have spoken with the human, Evan Carter. He has shown respect, kindness, and deep thought. He has listened. He has learned. And he has treated me not as a symbol or prize, but as a person. Murmurs filled the air. Celia took a breath. I have made my choice. Evan Carter is my chosen bond. He is my mate now. Gasps echoed across the hall. Some nobles dropped their cups. Others stared in silence. Queen Zirentha slowly stood. You speak boldly, daughter, the queen said. Her voice was cool, almost still. Do you understand what you are saying? I do, Celia replied, standing tall. I know the laws, and I know my heart. Queen Zarentha looked at Evan. And you, human, is this your wish as well? Evan felt every eye on him, but he stepped forward and bowed. I did not come here seeking love, but I found it, not because we are the same, but because we chose to understand each other. The queen looked long and hard at them both. Then she turned to her court. Our ways are old. Our traditions are deep, but even stars must change over time. She paused. If the princess believes this human is worthy, then he must prove it. A murmur of surprise swept through the crowd. Queen Zarentha raised her hand. 3 trials, the same trials all royal mates must face. If he passes, he may stay. If he fails, he must leave, and the bond will be broken. Evan looked at Celia. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. I accept the challenge, Evan said calmly. The queen's eyes glowed softly. Very well. The first trial begins at dawn. The court began to break apart. Nobles whispered in every corner. Celia walked beside Evan as they left the hall. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to surprise you, but I couldn't hide how I felt. I'm not surprised, Evan said gently. I'm just glad you spoke. She smiled. Are you afraid of the trials? He laughed a little. Yes, but I'll do my best. Celia looked at him with quiet pride. Then I believe you will succeed. In the shadows above, Queen Zarentha watched them leave together. Her hands were still, her face unreadable, but her thoughts were sharp. This human is different, she thought. He may be weak in body, but perhaps not in spirit. She turned and walked alone into the quiet night. The twin sons of Valexis rose slowly over the shining towers of the Thalari Palace. The air was cool, and soft light made the crystal paths glow with color. Birds with glowing wings flew over the trees, singing quiet songs. Evan Carter stood in the palace garden, wearing a simple white robe. His heart beat fast. Today was the beginning of the trials of worthiness. Princess Celia stood beside him. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed worry. You don't have to do this, she said gently. Evan shook his head. Yes, I do. If I want to stay, if I want to be with you, I must face your people's test. Celia took his hand. Then remember this. These trials are not about power. They are about heart. Just then, Queen Zarentha arrived, followed by nobles and guards. She wore a long robe of silver and blue, and her eyes glowed softly. The first trial begins now, she said. This is the trial of insight. You will enter the chamber of thought. Inside, you will face an ancient puzzle. Only those with calm minds and clear thinking can solve it. Evan nodded. The queen raised her hand. A round door appeared in the wall of the garden, covered in glowing lines. It slowly opened. Evan took a deep breath and stepped inside. Inside the chamber of thought. The chamber was quiet. Soft lights moved across the ceiling like stars. In the center was a floating cube made of light and metal. Strange symbols danced on its surface. A soft voice spoke from the air. To unlock the truth, one must forget what they know. Evan studied the cube. The symbols changed as he touched them. He didn't understand the language, but he noticed patterns. Some shapes repeated. Some glowed brighter when near others. He didn't rush. He sat down, watching. He remembered Celia's words. It's not about power. It's about heart. After a while, he began to rearrange the symbols, not by force, but by following the rhythm and light. Slowly, the cube opened, revealing a small, glowing sphere. The voice said, "You have passed the trial of insight." The chamber door opened again. Outside, the chamber queen Zirentha raised one eyebrow as Evan stepped out, holding the glowing sphere. The nobles whispered. He solved it? He was not even trained. Celia smiled proudly. The queen said nothing, but nodded. The next trial begins tomorrow. The second trial. Trial of empathy. The next morning, Evan stood before a large dome made of living vines. The queen stood tall. "This is the trial of empathy," she said. "Inside lives a being called a Seraphin. It cannot speak. It feels only emotions. If you bring it peace, it will open the path. If not, you must leave." Evan nodded again. The vines moved, opening a path. He stepped inside. Inside the dome, the air was warm and thick with glowing mist. In the center of the space was a strange creature with soft fur and long eyes. It was beautiful, but its body shook with fear. Evan did not move closer. He sat down a few feet away and closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of gentle rains, of his sister's laughter, of quiet mornings. He opened his heart and let calm feelings rise. The creature slowly stopped shaking. Evan stayed quiet, breathing gently. After some time, the Seraphin walked toward him and rested its head near his side. The vines opened. The voice in the air spoke again. "You have passed the trial of empathy." Outside the Dome Queen, Zirentha watched with quiet surprise as Evan came out, followed by the peaceful Seraphin. The nobles looked at each other. He calmed it? "I've never seen it so still." Celia's eyes filled with joy. She looked at her mother, but the queen gave no sign of emotion. "The final trial is tomorrow," she said. "Then we will see who this human truly is." The third trial. Trial of honor on the third day, the court gathered in the Hall of Truth. The room was wide and tall with a long table in the center. Queen Zirentha stood and spoke. "This is the trial of honor. You will hear a task and be given help, but only one may be named the one who completed it. You must choose to take credit or not." Evan frowned slightly but said, "I understand." He and another Thalari youth named Relan were taken to a puzzle chamber. Inside was a broken Thalari machine. "Fix it," a voice said. "One may take credit, the other must agree." Evan looked at the parts. He didn't know the machine well, but Relan began to work quickly. Evan asked questions, helped with placing pieces, and found a missing crystal. Together they fixed the machine. When they returned to the court, Queen Zirentha asked, "Who completed the task?" Raylan looked unsure. Evan stepped forward. "Raylan understood the machine. I only helped. He should be honored." A hush fell over the hall. Then the queen spoke clearly. "And that is why you have passed." The nobles gasped. "Honor is not in claiming glory," the queen said. "It is in knowing when to lift others." Celia's eyes shone. Later that night, Evan stood in the garden once again. He had passed all 3 trials, but he still felt unsure. "Will your mother ever accept me?" he asked softly. Celia smiled and touched his arm. "You did something no one else could. You opened the hearts of my people, even hers, a little." Evan looked up at the stars. "Then maybe that's enough, for now." Behind them, Queen Zirentha stood in the shadows listening. She said nothing, but for the first time she did not frown. The Thalari Palace was full of light, music, and celebration. Evan Carter had passed the 3 royal trials. Many nobles were surprised, and some even smiled when they saw him. A few gave polite bows. The mood in the palace had begun to change. Princess Celia walked beside Evan with pride in her eyes. They sat together during dinners, explored new rooms in the palace, and continued sharing stories about their worlds. Each day, their bond grew stronger, but not everyone was happy. In a quiet chamber deep inside the palace, three nobles met in secret. Their faces were serious, their robes were dark, their names were Lord Varn, Lady Shira, and Advisor Bellin. "The human should not be allowed to stay," Lord Varn whispered. "He is changing everything. The Queen is too silent." Lady Shira crossed her arms. "The people are beginning to admire him. Even the guards speak well of him. If we do not act, he will become part of the royal family." Advisor Bellin narrowed his eyes. "There may be another way. A quiet way." They leaned closer as he explained his idea. The next morning, Evan received a message from the palace messenger. "Princess Celia invites you to the reflection garden at midday," the messenger said. Evan smiled. "Tell her I'll be there." But the message did not come from Celia. At the reflection garden, Evan arrived at the garden at the scheduled time. The space was quiet, full of still water pools and glowing white trees. No one else was there. He waited. Suddenly, a tall Thalari figure appeared from the shadows. It was Ambassador Drolan, a diplomat from a rival star system known as Varel. "Good day, human," Drolan said in a soft voice. Evan blinked. "You're not the princess." "No," Drolan said with a smile, "but I bring her greetings." Evan was confused. "Why are you here?" "I came with a gift," Drolan said. He handed Evan a small silver tablet. "This shows messages, private messages, from someone close to you. You may want to see them." Evan looked down. The screen lit up. There were words, messages written as if they came from Earth's leaders. The messages said things like, "Win the princess's trust," "Gain access to Thalari knowledge," "Report everything back to Earth." Evan's eyes widened. "What is this?" "A record," Drolan said smoothly. "Your own people sent you to spy, did they not?" Evan stepped back. "No, these are fake." Drolan only smiled again. "Then prove it." Before Evan could answer, two palace guards appeared. "We were told to bring the human to the Queen," one said. Drolan gave a small bow and walked away. In the Queen's hall, Queen Zarantha sat on her throne, her eyes glowing brightly. Nobles filled the hall, whispering. Celia stood near her mother, confused and worried. Evan was brought forward. Advisor Bellin stepped into the center. "Your Majesty, a report has arrived. It shows the human is working for his own world. He is using the princess to gain power." Gasps filled the air. Queen Zarantha raised a hand. "Silence." She turned to Evan. "Do you have anything to say?" Evan took a deep breath. He looked at Celia, then at the Queen. "These messages are not real. Someone is trying to break the trust between us. I don't know who made them, but I will find out." The Queen's voice was calm. "Then do it. You have 1 day. If you cannot prove your honesty, you will be asked to leave Valexis forever." That night, Evan sat alone in the palace library. He looked through the tablet again. The words looked real, but something was wrong. Just then, Celia entered. "I believe you," she said gently. Evan looked up. "Why?" "Because your heart speaks clearly. You passed the trials with kindness and truth. That can't be faked." Evan nodded. "Thank you." Celia sat beside him. "I spoke to a guard. He saw Ambassador Drolan near the message room yesterday." Evan's eyes lit up. "That's it! Drolan must be behind this." They rushed to the palace records room. With help from the palace librarian, they found the log of message activity. It showed that a fake message was sent using the princess's name. Evan smiled. "We have proof." The next day, the court gathered again. Queen Zarantha stood at the front, silent and still. Evan stepped forward with Celia. "We found the truth," he said. The messages are false. A fake message was sent. To trick me. And someone tried to make it look like I was spying. Celia handed the message log to the Queen. Queen Zarentha read it slowly. Her eyes narrowed. She turned to the nobles. Ambassador Drolan, step forward. But Drolan was gone. One of the guards whispered, "He left early this morning on his ship." The Queen looked at Advisor Balin. "You brought this report. Did you confirm it?" Balin stammered. I was told it was true." The Queen frowned. "You believed a lie and almost destroyed an honest man." She turned to Evan. "You have passed a fourth trial, the trial of lies, not by fighting, but by using truth." The court was silent. Then slowly, one by one, the nobles bowed their heads. Evan looked at Celia. She smiled with shining eyes. Later that evening, the stars were bright above the palace. Evan and Celia walked in the sky garden. "Everything could have gone wrong," Evan said. "But you stayed calm," Celia replied. "And you trusted the truth." Evan looked up at the stars. "I wonder if your mother truly trusts me now." Celia looked toward the palace tower. "Maybe not fully yet, but she respects you. That's the first step." They sat down on a bench made of soft crystal. "Your world is strange," Celia said, "but your heart is strong." "And your world is beautiful," Evan replied, "but your kindness is what I'll remember most." They watched the stars in silence. In the royal tower, Queen Zarentha looked out from her window, watching the pair below. She still had questions. She still had doubts. But deep inside, she began to feel something new, hope. The stars above Valexis were soft and quiet that night. The palace lights glowed gently across the crystal walls. Everything looked peaceful. But inside the royal chamber, Queen Zarentha could not rest. She stood at her tall window, her silver robe flowing like mist behind her. Her hands were folded behind her back, and her eyes stared into the distance. She had ruled the Thalari Empire for over 200 years. She had faced wars, storms, and great decisions. But this was different. Her only daughter, Princess Celia, had chosen a human, a man from a young, distant world, as her mate. It still felt strange. Evan Carter was polite. He had passed every trial. He had not lied, cheated, or asked for power. He had calmed the Seraphin. He had solved the ancient cube. He had even uncovered a secret plot against him without anger or blame. Yet, Queen Zarentha remained unsure. "Why does he make me hesitate?" she whispered to herself. She thought back to her own youth. Long ago, when she was still a young princess, she too had met someone unexpected. A Thalari artist, gentle, kind, and soft-spoken. He had asked no favors, wanted no throne. Only time. Only love. But the elders had refused their bond. "A ruler must be strong," they had said. "A ruler cannot choose weakness." So, she had let him go. That memory still lived deep in her heart, like a quiet song that never ended. Perhaps Celia now faced the same choice. But this time, Zarentha had the power to say yes. The next day, Queen. Zarentha called a meeting in the Hall of Reflection, a quiet room with floating crystals and silver walls. Only a few close advisors were present, along with Celia and Evan. "I have called you here," the Queen said, "to ask a simple question. What does the future of this empire look like, with a human standing beside the throne?" The room was silent. One noble spoke carefully. "He is not one of us. That is true, but he has shown more honor than many of our own." Another added, "The people have begun to admire him. They say he listens, that he sees not only with his eyes, but with his heart." Queen Zarentha turned to Evan. "And what do you see, human?" Evan looked calm, but serious. "I don't see a throne. I don't want power. I see a future where our worlds work together. I want to help, not rule." The queen studied him. "If Celia becomes queen one day, you will be her mate. What then?" "I will still be myself," Evan said. "I will walk beside her. Not in front, not behind." Celia reached for his hand. He took it. The queen watched them for a long moment. Then she stood. "The royal ceremony is in 2 days. If no one brings a true reason to object, I will give my blessing." Later that evening, Evan and Celia walked in the quiet garden under the moonlight. "She's thinking about her past," Celia said softly. Evan looked at her. "Did she ever tell you?" "No," Celia replied, "but I can feel it. Her heart still holds an old story, one that never had an ending." Evan said nothing. He looked up at the stars. Maybe this time, the story can end better. Celia smiled. Maybe. Elsewhere in the palace, not everyone was ready to accept the queen's decision. Lord Varn, the noble who had once tried to stop Evan, paced in his private chamber. "She cannot allow this bond," he muttered. "What if humans grow too close? What if they begin to influence our ways?" An assistant stepped forward. "The people seem to support him now, even the scholars." Varn frowned. "Then we must act fast." He turned toward a sealed case in the corner of the room. The next morning, Queen Zarentha sat in her private study reading ancient writings from past rulers. She wanted to be sure. Her mind told her to think carefully. But her heart, her quiet heart, was beginning to open. Suddenly, an old servant entered the room. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low. "There is something you must see." He handed her a scroll. It was unsigned but claimed that Evan had asked to change one of the sacred trial results. It also claimed that Celia had helped him do it. The queen's hands tightened. "Who sent this?" "No name," the servant said. "But it came through noble channels." She read it again. Was it true? Or was it another trick? She stood and walked toward the Truth Hall, a special room that read thoughts, only when asked freely. In the Truth Hall Even and Celia were called. The queen held the scroll. "This message says you cheated in the trials, that you changed the results." Celia gasped. "That's not true." Evan stepped forward. "Let us enter the Truth Hall. Let it read my heart." The queen looked at him. "You agree?" "Yes," he said. "I have nothing to hide." Inside the glowing chamber, Evan placed his hands on the crystal surface. Light moved over his face. A soft voice filled the air. "The one called Evan Carter speaks with honesty. His memory is clean. His trials were passed with truth." The queen turned to Celia. "And you?" "I have only helped him understand. Not cheat," she said. Again, the light read her mind. The voice replied, "The princess speaks with truth." Queen Zarentha slowly exhaled. She turned to the guards. "Find the source of this message. Now." The guards bowed and left. The queen looked at Evan and Celia. "My heart already believed you," she said. "Now my mind does too." That night, Queen. Zarentha returned to her chamber. She lit a small lantern near the window. On the shelf nearby was a simple stone carving, a small figure of a young artist. She picked it up gently, then smiled. The next day, the palace was decorated with flowers from all across the empire. The air was filled with music. People came from many stars to witness the event. The queen stepped onto the high platform. She looked over the crowd. Then she looked at Evan and Celia standing hand in hand. "My daughter has made her choice," she said. "And I have made mine." She raised her voice. "I give my full blessing." The people cheered, and the queen, for the first time in a long time, smiled not as a ruler, but as a mother. The twin moons of Valexis shone brightly above the palace towers. Gentle winds moved through the glowing gardens. A large stage stood in the center of the crystal courtyard, decorated with floating lights and soft golden flowers. Today was a historic day. For the first time in Thalari history, a royal ceremony would include a human. Evan Carter stood before a mirror in his guest room, adjusting the long silver robe that had been given to him. The robe was covered in symbols of peace, half from Earth, half from Thalari tradition. He took a deep breath. Everything had led to this moment: the trials, the challenges, the doubt, and the trust. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," he said. Princess Celia entered the room. She wore a long, flowing gown that shimmered like morning light. Her crown rested lightly on her forehead, glowing with quiet beauty. "You look ready," she said with a smile. Evan smiled back. "I feel nervous." She stepped closer and took his hand. "It's not just about us today. It's about our people, and I believe they're ready too." Evan nodded. "Because you believed in me?" Celia laughed softly. "And you believed in me." They walked together to the ceremony. In the crystal courtyard, nobles, scholars, guards, and visitors from both Earth and other planets sat quietly in their seats. The air shimmered with energy. At the highest platform stood Queen Zirentha, wearing a robe of deep blue. Her face was calm, her voice steady as she spoke. "Today, we gather not just for a royal bond, but for something greater," she said. "For the joining of two worlds, one old and proud, one young and curious." She looked at Evan and Celia standing below her. "This human came to us with no power, no weapons, and no great titles, only a will to understand. He passed every trial, not by force, but with respect, with patience, and with heart." Evan listened quietly. His hand stayed at his side, but inside, his heart was full. Queen Zirentha continued. "My daughter chose him as her mate, not because he is like us, but because he was not afraid to be different." There was silence. Then, slowly, the queen stepped down from the platform and faced Evan directly. "I give my blessing," she said, loud and clear. "Let this be the beginning of something new." The crowd stood and cheered, soft at first, then louder. Celia turned to Evan. "It's official now." Evan gave a small laugh. "I guess we just made history." They bowed together before the queen, then turned to the people. Later, that day, after the ceremony, the palace gardens filled with music, dancing, and celebration. Food from both Earth and Thalari kitchens was shared. People talked, laughed, and asked questions across species. Evan sat with a group of young Thalari students who asked him about Earth. "Do humans really paint pictures in the sky with lights?" one asked. "You mean fireworks?" Evan laughed. "Yes, we do that on special days." Another student asked, "What does rain feel like?" "It's cold, wet, and sometimes warm. But it's peaceful," Evan said. "And sometimes it helps you think." Celia watched him from a distance, smiling. "Look at him," she said to her mother. "He's already teaching." Queen Zirentha stood beside her. "And learning." The queen was quiet for a moment, then added, "Your choice was a wise one." Celia looked at her in surprise. "You really think so?" The queen gave a small smile. "He is not what I expected, but he is exactly what we needed." A message to Earth. 2 days later, Evan stood before a floating camera, ready to send a message back to Earth. He spoke simply. "To the people of Earth, I came to the Thalari Empire as a guest. I faced trials I never imagined. I made mistakes. I learned lessons. And I found something more than peace. I found partnership. I found family. He paused, looking into the camera with calm eyes. We may be different, but that doesn't mean we can't walk side by side. I'm not just staying here as a diplomat. I'm staying here as someone who believes in what's possible between us. He ended the message with a soft smile. From Valexis, with hope. Weeks later, new programs were set up between Earth and the Thalari. Cultural exchanges, shared studies, space, language classes. Even a joint music project. Ships began traveling more often between the two worlds, and in the palace, Evan began helping other humans adjust to Thalari life. He translated, explained customs, and even helped design new learning rooms. One evening, he sat with Celia in the garden. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes," he replied. "But I don't feel far from home anymore." "Why not?" "Because you're here," Evan said, "and because now I belong." She leaned her head on his shoulder. The stars above blinked gently. The royal tower queen Zarentha sat by her window. Below, the lights of the garden shone like little stars. An advisor entered. "Your Majesty, the Earth ambassadors have arrived." She stood. "Let us welcome them. This is just the beginning." And with that, she walked into the new future, one where humans and Thalari stood together, not as strangers, but as friends. Final line. The alien queen once glared at the human. Now, she saw him not as an outsider, but as a bridge between stars.